Welcome back to episode 15 of the Service Design Podcast. I'm David Morgan from Night Moves, and together with Stina Vanhoof and in collaboration with the Service Design Network, we have conversations about service design with practitioners from around the globe. In this episode, we delve into 10 years of the Service Design Global Conference. We speak with Birgit Mager, Jamin Hegeman, and Alex Nisbett, who were involved with organizing the conference from the start. They share their learnings from the past and will get you excited for the upcoming sold-out edition in Madrid. We look forward to seeing you there and hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to our podcast, Alex, Birgit, and Jamin. We're speaking to you because it's been 10 years since you've been organizing the Service Design Global Conference, and we thought it would be great to catch up with you guys to talk about the last 10 years, what's coming up this year, and maybe a bit about the future. Before we get into this, could you introduce yourselves to our listeners? Let's start alphabetically, Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex Nisbett. I'm an independent service designer based in London, in the UK. I've been a service designer for about 12 years now. I'm also part of the event team at the Service Design Network, the SDN, and have been so for about 6 or 7 years now.
Okay, great.
Birgit?
I'm Birgit Mager. I'm a professor for service design in Cologne, Germany at the Technical University for almost 24 years now. And I'm a co-founder and the president of the Service Design Network.
Jamin.
And I am Jamin Hegeman. I'm the vice president and head of design for Capital One's financial services division in Dallas, Texas. And I've been part of or contributing to the SDN for the last 10 years.
All right. So how did you guys get to work together on the SDN and on the conference? How did it all start?
Birgit, do you want to start?
Okay. Yeah. Well, from my perspective, it started with the emergence conferences that were done at Carnegie Mellon University. The student team around Shelley Evanson had picked the topic service design as one of the most important topics coming up in the design world. And they had organized 2 conferences in a row at the Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And that's where I met Jamin. So once the conferences were no longer done in Pittsburgh, we decided that the Service Design Network would start doing global conferences. And that was in 2008.
Okay.
And Alex I knew forever. Alex I knew forever because he was working in London in, the very early, very first service design agencies. And I think we met for the first time in 2002 and had been in touch forever. And I was really happy when Alex joined forces to help us grow the service design community and our events.
Listen, you just phoned me up out of the blue and said, hey, would you like to come and facilitate a workshop at our first conference? I was just so excited.
Oh, and thanks for bringing that up because I think that ties everything together for me. So I went to Carnegie Mellon University and studied under Shelley Evanson from 2006 to 2008 in my master's program in design. My very first week of classes was the first emergence conference focused on service design. So immediately I was introduced to this world of service design and all the prominent folks at the time. And the following year, Shelley asked me to lead the conference. It was a student-run conference. So I got further immersed in the conference, obviously started to develop a relationship with Birgit. And then when the SDN decided to pick up the conference after that, Birgit and Shelley asked me to help contribute to just putting on the program, given the experience I had with Emergence. And Shelley and Alex and I co-led the workshop that Alex just mentioned. So that's when I got to meet Alex and worked with him the first time.
Okay, cool. And how did this first conference look like? It was in Amsterdam, if I'm right. How many people were there? What did you do? Can you tell our listeners to take them 10 years back in time?
Yeah, it was in Amsterdam, and it was done in collaboration with a very ambitious young design team from the service design scene in Amsterdam. We had no idea if anybody would want to come. So we were really super excited when we had 230 people for the conference. And the day before the conference, we had our very first ever Service Design Network members meeting. At that time, we had 40 members. And I think all of them were there, and we had them do pecha kuchas to introduce themselves. So it was a very, very personal setting and, very strong and intense networking.
So this is pretty much the first conference I can remember going to. To be honest with you, in my professional life, I think I was a graphic designer before, a service designer, and that kind of thing. And conferences weren't really a very big thing, but somehow within service design, it seemed to make sense that we all wanted to share what we were doing. We wanted to share our then tools and methods and stuff like that and our stories. And so somehow the coming together of this network at a conference seemed to be the most logical thing to do.
And you, Jamin?
Yeah, I mean, I remember it was a 2-day conference. So we had a single track that first day and then workshops on the following day. And it was something that just, I can't remember how it all came together, but it did. And one of the things I remember was in final days leading up to the conference, I think Birgit asked if I would MC the event. So that was a great honor for me to introduce all the speakers of the first conference.
Okay, it's great to hear that all the three of you were already there 10 years ago. And so you organized the conference since then. So that's already 10 years, if I'm right, or this year will be the 10th. Is that true?
This year is the 10th.
Yeah. And what do you think changed after those 10 years? Of course, a lot changed, but what is like the biggest difference that you noticed?
I'd actually observe that the professionalism that to which we approach the conference echoes very much the professionalism and growth of service design as a professional practice. So I think back in 2008 and the years leading up to that, it was almost an underground thing. It was very emerging. But since over the last 10 years, it has grown physically. It's increased in size astronomically. And the way that we've approached the whole world of conferences has, as I say, professionalized as well. So in that way, it's grown in the same way that service design has probably grown.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say the topics have changed, of course. I mean, when we started, everybody was still very excited about personas and journey maps, and we were so emotional about visualizing service processes and understanding the user needs. And I think now this has become a commodity. I mean, everybody does journey maps, and the service design community has moved far beyond it. We are now discussing strategic issues. We are discussing about implementation. We are discussing about scaling service design. So I would really say the topics have changed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would just echo those things. I mean, I think it's not a coincidence that this year's conference is Service Design at Scale. And in those 10 years, we've scaled in a lot of different ways. The size of the conference has increased from a few hundred to, over 600 consecutively over the past couple of years. And, the impact that service design has made, not just in our community, but more and more in actual businesses and implementation and embedding into businesses has changed a lot. And that's changed our content. It's changed the mixture of the audience and even just the prominence of our conference. I mean, in those early years, as with most conferences, you're struggling to make sure that you get all the seats filled. And this, we're fortunate to be in this year with a very strong program and people, signing up even, sight unseen sometimes just because they know it's going to be a relevant event with great speakers and a great audience as well.
What would you say has changed with regards to the audience? Is it built up differently, the people who sign up for the conference now as opposed to 10 years ago?
I think, interestingly, we had some very prominent speakers in the early conferences, notably people from Virgin Atlantic and McDonald's. So we've always had representation from those, shall we say, that are delivering services. But I think the general shift over the years has been more and more towards, those people that are designing and delivering services inside organizations. There are more, shall we say, client organizations and businesses that are using service design inside business as usual. The consultant, the designer, if you like, has always been present, sort of probably fairly consistently over the 10 years. It may be that in the early days, there was even more interest from the academic community. That interest has certainly not gone away, but maybe the numbers might be slightly less, if you like, because that reflects the increasing other conferences that are around as well, that are in this space. And there are an increasing number of those. But I'd say, broadly speaking, the mix of the audiences has increased. There are more varied, more variety of people attending the conferences for one thing, but also joining the network as well, becoming a member.
Mm-hmm. But it's interesting to hear that more and more organizations who are implementing service design are also there, because that means they're embedding it already in their organization, and they want to learn more to improve it. And that it's not only the service design consultants that are present at the conference.
I think that's in the nature of service design. If you bring service design to an organization, you empower the organization to take parts of the responsibility themselves. So it's quite natural that the interest and the knowledge around service design within organizations is growing. And some organizations have really built huge service design-driven innovation labs, which I find very amazing.
Yeah. Have you noticed that there's also a difference in industries participating in the conference? For example, is it mainly more commercial companies with a focus on a certain topic, or government agencies? Is there a difference in 10 years ago?
It's Alex here. So I'd say that, broadly speaking, the mix of organizations, of businesses, it's broader now than it used to be. We've probably seen, if you were to look at the headcount of service designers and where they work, certainly here in the UK, there could well be even more people working in the public sector designing services, delivering services, than there are in the commercial sector. That's a possibility. But that kind of variety, if you like, that balance does change from, I think, from country to country and city to city. But broadly speaking, in the early days, it was the telcos, the airlines, the retailers, if you like, that are willing to take a bit of a risk, if you like, that believed that service design was going to deliver some value. And those early risk takers, if you like, paved the way, I think, very much for, shall we say, more cautious businesses and organizations that may be less naturally comfortable with risk. And now we see more and more of those businesses and organizations adopting those approaches and turning up to our conferences now as compared to maybe in the early days.
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't know that the industries have changed that much. I mean, certainly the scale, the number of people that are exposed, and now, as Birgit said, kind of embedding service design into the capabilities of the business has changed a lot. Whereas I think in the earlier days, there was a lot more, outside consultancy help with these organizations, but the types of services and industries that service design is really keen for, I don't think have changed. So the banking, telcos, airlines, like really complex, massive services. One thing that might be different is with the increased awareness of service design, you're seeing it a lot more in smaller doses, and just the thinking behind new services and startup companies that are bringing this mindset into what they do. I feel like that has increased a lot over the past many years, where in the beginning, I actually don't remember too many, startups being part of the conversation.
I think from what I've seen, I could almost pinpoint the moment maybe when the government digital service here in the UK in government level, once they started to build a service design capability, I think that became a turning point, not just for governments around the world, but also has had an impact on commercial organizations as well. So in other words, if it's good enough for a government to be adopting service design approaches, then it's pretty much good enough for me, if you like. I think that's a very, very exciting move, that service design approaches are creating the evidence of the value that they can provide, not just at an individual user or touch point level, but also at a far more strategic and policy level, if you like. So uniquely, service design is able to deliver change at those high levels, but also at the more personal and citizen levels as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And therefore, the topic of the conference in Madrid is, of course, very important. Like the topic is service design at scale. And I think that's a very important aspect to be able to be part of a large organization and to manage to both bring service design at the top and at the bottom and in the different levels of the services. Can you explain us a little bit more about why this topic was chosen as a conference topic this year?
So Alex and I are both leaders of our event board, and we've been developing the conferences together since 2011 in San Francisco. That's when he and I really joined forces to lead the conference strategy and look at the title of the conference, which we've always debated about whether it's a title or whether it's a theme. But we try to title the conference in a way that is reflective of what we see going on in the development of the community and of service design. And, last year, the title was Business as Unusual, and which we thought seemed to reflect that this move of service design deeper into organizations and developing as a capability, but not quite the norm yet. And so this year, as we thought about it and reflecting on what we learned last year, our thought was that, yes, it's becoming more business as usual, but the types of problems that we're wrestling with are changing, because that is also a change in the scale of the service. And, as Birgit said, true service design is empowering the whole organization. And as it becomes business as usual, it can't be about a single designer or a center of excellence. It's really got to scale and expand within the organization to be effective and to really take root. That was my perspective on this title. And actually, we'll be speaking about this in the conference. I did not nominate myself, by the way. That was Alex, but happy to speak to this because it's a huge part of what I'm doing now within Capital One. But again, this seemed to be reflective of what we're noticing, the movement and the conversation within the community. It's no longer, as Birgit said, 10 years ago, personas and journeys. It's not like how to do the things. It's like, well, how does this work within a broader organization when, the designers or the people that may have brought it in aren't the ones that are now responsible for carrying them through and making them part of everyone's daily work.
I'd just like to add there that for anybody that thinks that coming up with the titles or the themes for the work for the conferences is purely the work of Jamin and myself, that's not true at all. There's a lot of people pitching in their ideas, including, and most importantly, if you like, it's members of the network that are contributing their thoughts to what is the current, the zeitgeist, the current kind of mood, if you like, or the big questions that we're looking to answer, whether that's transformation or whether it's value or whether it's health and well-being. These are all themes and topics that have bubbled up, shall we say, from through the network. And maybe Jamin and I provided just a bit of filtering every once in a while to help the strongest ideas to come to life.
I was not at all involved.
Yeah, I mean, just
involved in the creation of the title, but when I saw it for the first time while the team was still making choices, I totally fell in love with it because I think it reflects so much on what is happening right now. Our own success is changing the way that we have to think about service design. The more success we have within large organizations, private or public, the more we need to think about how to change our approach in order to fit the expectations and the needs that these large organizations have. That also means that we will no longer, be the sticky note and journaling people. We will have to embrace big data. We will have to embrace new tools in order to reach out to huge organizations of many subdivisions. So I think that's a really mind-tickling challenge that we are facing. And I'm very much looking forward to these conversations in Madrid.
I can definitely say that the title theme also very much resonates with ourselves. It's something I think a lot of service designers are tackling with at the moment. Like, how do we scale it up? You find you are so dependent on having the support of an entire organization if you really want to do it right. Talking about the network and having them help, at some point you've started using local chapters in organizing the conferences. Is that how it still works now? Do you have local chapters help in organizing the conferences?
We do, and actually just going back to where the theme comes up, just to build on a little bit what Alex said, is we do work with our local chapter or team to get those ideas. So it very much is a collaborative effort. And as he said, we, ultimately there's some curation that's involved, but that was, service design from scale came just as much from them as it did from us. But so as I said, Alex and I, the first few years, there was a small group of us that contributed to the conference, and it kind of changed a little bit, from Amsterdam to Berlin to San Francisco to Paris. But when Alex and I did the conference in 2011, we really, in San Francisco, where I was living at the time, it seemed really important that we have people on the ground in the city to help support, that local experience and to make sure we're bringing in the perspective of the location or the country. And from that stemmed a strategy of partnering where possible with a local chapter. So I'd say we experimented with this a bit in Paris. And then we made it more rigorous for the UK conference, I think in 2013 with the UK chapter. And, I think part of that was scaling ourselves and what we do. And part of it was a way to, have the network be a key component in putting on this conference, which is for a community of service designers, and I think that's how we've been able to balance, this continuity with Birgit and Alex and myself and the rest of the SDN management and headquarters, and making it a community event and bringing in those voices and perspective.
So that actually means that local chapters, they help in organizing the whole conference.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
I think I think what's really exciting is that by hosting the conference across different cities globally, if you like, the flavor of each conference varies. So it almost varies in line with not just the energy, enthusiasm, and time and size of the local chapter, but also in line slightly, you might say culturally as well, with the host country and the host city. So it's really important to us that it stays, if you like, embedded in the network, out there in the network, which is why we have not gone down the route of hosting the conference in just the same location year upon year. We want it to be to be kind of co-owned in many ways by the network themselves.
Before we delve into the upcoming conference, I'd like to ask you each, do you have an individual highlight of the last 10 years? I'm sure there's been many, but is there something that springs to mind that really stands out for you as a great experience in the past 10 years on one of the conferences? Birgit?
Yes, I would love to start. I think for me it was Cardiff, because Cardiff is a bit out of the way. It does not have an international airport, so we were all a little bit concerned whether that would be a good idea to go there. But the Cardiff team was so strong, and they convinced us. And when we then were in the process of preparing the conference for the very first time ever, we were approached from companies asking if they could sponsor us. And that was the moment when I thought, this is a breakthrough event. We don't have to go around and polish the door handles anymore to get a little bit of sponsoring support, but people were approaching us and saying, can we sponsor your conference? So that will be for always unforgettable for me. It took a lot of burden away, because
yes.
You know how it is if you decide to go into a conference thing, you invest a lot of money, you sign contracts, and for the years before Cardiff, I had always been in sleepless nights until we felt, okay, it's going to fly again. And with Cardiff, suddenly it seemed that we were so professional, and service design had reached such a maturity that we did not need to worry that much anymore.
Nice.
And Alex?
There are a couple of standout moments for me. I guess the first would be listening to Shaolin monk talking about meditation at the Stockholm 2014 conference, which was all about creating value for quality of life. That was a wonderful moment. I think the other, which again is an experiential moment for me, is the two hosts of the Amsterdam conference last year entering the auditorium on Dutch bikes. So they cycled into the auditorium. And I think that, for me, that reminded me of the very human nature of what we're doing, the experiential nature. So those are my highlights there.
Nice. We remember the bikes. We also really liked it. What about you, Jamin?
Yeah, I mean, so I probably would have said Cardiff for the similar reasons that Birgit said, but just to be different, I'll say that one of the things that stands out was a evening event in Berlin on a boat going down the river. And I think we served like currywurst, and I brought an iPod, which was so relevant at the time, full of music that people ended up dancing to. So much so that I left my iPod there because I was done and they were still going, so I had to retrieve that later. But I think to me that one of the aspects that stands out to me about the conference is the community and the fun that we have together. It's not just the content, it's the people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that stood out for me very definitely. Just the people at the conference, they are all so friendly. You want to talk and chat with everybody. And I don't know, do you think that's a thing about service designers, that they have a particular kind of personality or something, and that makes for a different kind of audience?
Yeah, I think there's a sense that we're all in this together. So arguably service design is still a very kind of emerging, shall we say, profession. So we share that in common, that we believe wholeheartedly in what we're doing. We're willing to take risks, that we're willing to put our reputation on the line, if you like, when we say that we believe that, working in this way is fundamentally a very good thing. Yes, I think there's also an element of us all being very empathic as well. That's part and parcel, I think, of being able to successfully use some of these approaches. And yeah, we're, on the whole, I'd say we're also very creative people as well, and we like having a good time. So I think you add all those things together, and you end up with a very positive vibe.
To the whole philosophy of service design, that you are not a hero designer who gets famous for this one chair or this one amazing shelf that he has done, but that we are used to working in interdisciplinary teams, connecting people for a shared outcome. I think that shows in the way that people are sharing their thoughts, sharing their knowledge, sharing their tools. It's just a very open-minded community that is in a way also modest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something you can really feel at the conference. It's all humble people who are doing great things with enthusiasm and they want to share stuff. They're social and they are empathic. They can talk to each other. You have nice conversations. I think it's something which really stood out in the last conference as well.
But I would add that there is a healthy dose of competition now with the Service Design Awards. I'm sure that everybody that enters those awards would like to win. And so there might be a little bit of reflection and, being able to cheer for your, maybe your design or the piece of work that you have contributed to might be hailed as maybe one of the better pieces of work that happened during that year.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say another thing that's really interesting about the people that I've reflected on a bunch is the composition and diversity in the audience, particularly the gender diversity. I think, if you go to what I love about service design is, it's multidisciplinary. It brings a bunch of different people. We're all in this together, like Birgit said. And it's not inherently tech focused. And I think a lot of, the design world and community gets a lot of focus for technology. And when you go to those conferences, the mix isn't as balanced. And what I love about the service design community is that there's like an inherent balance where, it's almost like you don't need to try that hard to get that diversity of gender. And then, the other thing where we see is just the diversity in this being a truly global conference. Even in the beginning where people were coming from, surprised us, but every year, that's just grown, and the composition of folks coming from South America and Asia, Australia is really impressive.
Right. So if we look now at the conference that's coming up, Madrid, what are things that you are really looking forward to? Are there things that you're going to be doing different this year? Are there any firsts?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm sure there will be.
Yeah.
There are always, do you know what? There are always firsts at every conference. I think one of the particularly exciting things about the conference is are the new voices and the new stories that come out year after year. So it's not about the same old businesses or organizations or individuals, if you like, the familiar faces. It's about the new faces. And I think that's where the surprises come. The surprises come from unexpected places. So last year, I think one of the most popular talks last year in Amsterdam was actually from more of a fine artist who left us with an awful lot of inspiration to finish the conference with. So the excitement, the interest doesn't always come from where you think it's going to come from.
And to directly answer your first, this will be the first conference that our Members' Day will be held at a former slaughterhouse. So that's been converted into more of a public art and design space. So it's got a pretty unique history and just a great aesthetic feel. And then the La Nave, which is the main conference venue, is some kind of former smeltering factory, huge and impressive, and it will definitely have a unique feeling. And even with the scale of the venue, last year in Amsterdam. I think this is going to be another eye catcher and moment of awe for the attendees.
Okay, so it's going to be a pretty interesting venue this year.
Yeah.
Okay, curious. You were talking about an experience on a boat you had in Berlin. Is there anything in this year's conference will there be a party or a moment where people can chat with each other that you could recommend to us?
So there will be a couple of highlights that should not be missed out on. One of them is, of course, our special members event, where we will have special speakers and a great reception at Vanhoof, not at Vanhoof, at the Centro Diseño in the evening at the Slaughterhouse. So that will be a really great networking opportunity. We will have a reception on the first day of the conference at Vanhoof with special Spanish tapas. And the Spanish team is really working hard to give a lot of Spanish flavor to that event. And there will be some guided tours through the nightlife of Madrid, which I think is worth participating in. So that are a couple of highlights. And we also have side events that have grown throughout the last years. We have a couple of master classes from very special partners on behavioral change in service design and other really interesting topics. So if you are traveling to Madrid, it's really worth spending a week and participating in the side events that are already starting 2 days before the real conference is starting.
I'll mention that the Members' Day is sold out.
All right. So that's a popular day. That's good to hear. Are there any talks that you are looking forward to? Any speakers you really want to hear?
I'd pick out not necessarily individual speakers at Madrid, but there is a growing application of service design approaches, I'd say in health and well-being especially, and also within social design. So the use of design in and around local communities and local government. So in other words, it's not just the application to commercial ventures, but the application where citizens like you and me would immediately benefit. I think that's a growing area and becoming more and more popular as well for, especially I'd say, younger service designers to get involved, who have the opportunity to get involved and make a real difference to society.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to say if there's an individual speaker or talk. So I agree with Alex. I'm just looking through the program, which I believe we got online in the past day or two. But there's so many good talks and speakers and new voices, and I think that's the thing that we always try to make sure we balance is bringing in new voices from the community. I don't know that people know our process for filling the content, but we do a mix of invited speakers and we have a call for presentations and workshops as well, where we actually get the majority of our talks. So it is very much a community-driven event and content creation, and so, a lot of these people are maybe taking the stage for the first time in a service design context, and which is, really exciting for us to be a platform for up and coming service designers and allow them to create new content for the community.
I'd also add, I think that's a really interesting point, that I don't think you have to be a service designer to speak at a service design conference. I would love to see a show of hands, who thinks of themselves as a service designer, who doesn't? And I think that maybe now, after 10 years, there's a greater percentage of people involved in service design and maybe coming to our conferences that are not, by definition, a service designer. They contribute to, they get involved with, the process of bringing services to life, bringing them to market and delivering them and even operating them, but they wouldn't call themselves a designer. And I think that's at the root of what we're doing. We're in a way helping to grow both the market and the capability around service design, but not restricting it to those that maybe call themselves a designer or went to art school or that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. So looking ahead, imagine in 10 years, there's been 20 service design conferences. Where do you hope that the conference will grow to? What will it be like then?
Well, we'll have to go to Mars probably or something.
Well,
I don't know, Birgit, you have any thoughts on that?
That it should grow. I was very reluctant to grow the size of the conference throughout the last years because I was always a bit afraid that this magic atmosphere that is one of the highlights of our events would suffer if it would become too big. But I think now I'm trusting that we can carry more than 1,000 people at one event and still have the magic happen. So I think I wanted to grow, but I also think that we might want to build satellites. We already have national conferences every year, about 2 or 3. And I think that we might put more emphasis on that in order to enable people to participate in conferences that are more focused on the national topics, and that would also make it possible to visit conferences without having to invest so much time and money in traveling. So I think having these satellites and strengthening these satellites will be part of our strategy. And the third point would be having more specialized events. I do see that the need for more in-depth knowledge for specific topics is growing. And I'm convinced that the Service Design Network can contribute to this more specialized knowledge. So we have been doing these impact reports on the public sector, for example. Now we are doing it on the health sector to generate knowledge that will really help specific branches to move forward. And I think that we will translate the knowledge that we and the community have in order to provide more specialized, in-depth events for our community.
I'm looking forward to exciting new formats, not just location-wise, but other formats and that we're not even aware of right now. I want to see the network, as a creative force, if you like, maybe challenging the kind of format that we currently have, but without, as you say, losing that magic. I think it's the magic of meeting like-minded people face to face, being able to have a dance or give them a hug or have a really deep conversation. Those are the important aspects of the network. We don't want to lose that DNA, but I really want to be able to see it grow. So hence, not just service design at scale, the theme for this year's conference, but arguably service design conferences at scale as well.
All right. Well, it's been great speaking to you guys. I know it wasn't easy to get all three of you together at the same time. You were three very busy individuals. So we're super happy we managed to get you all together. There's still tickets, I believe, a few tickets left for the conference. Is that right?
But I have to add, it's really only very few.
Yeah. So any listeners
for the special members event, and I think we will probably have to close registration for the conference by the end of next week latest. So we are almost there.
Okay. So that's good news for you.
Okay. So that's good news for you. And I think for the listeners, possibly there might be a few tickets left. If there are, be quick, get them. But especially, I think will be nice to all get together at the conference in Madrid. If people want to reach out to you guys, where will they be able to find you online?
I would say Twitter at Jamin is my Twitter.
So I'm at Alex Nisbett, all one word.
And I'm at BISDN.
All right. Great. We'll add all these links to the show notes so people can easily get in touch with you. Thanks again very much for your time. And we look forward to seeing you in Madrid and hopefully many of our listeners too.
Bye-bye. Thank
That's
you.
awesome. Bye.
That's great.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
you.
The Service Design Podcast was brought to you by the Service Design Network and Night Moves. For more information, previous episodes, or to join the conversation, please visit servicedesignpodcast.com. For more information about the Service Design Network, visit service-design-network.org, and for Night Moves, visit nightmoves.be. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to this podcast. The intro and outro music is from If the Stars Grow Dim Tonight by Hydrogen Sea featuring I Will, I Swear. Until next time.